But I guess let's start off of exactly like what is a cookie?
Yeah, so a cookie is just a fancy way of saying essentially a tracker that tracks what you do across the internet. There's the first party type that lives within an ecosystem like an Amazon, and then there's the third party type that tracks you kind of more broadly across everything that you're doing on the internet. There's IDFAs, there's a couple of different names for what amounts to a cookie, but they're all effectively just trackers.
Okay, how long have these been around? Like since the internet, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if you were to go back to the mid 90s, you'd find that we weren't really using cookies much, but rather we were just relying on like for targeting contextual and just essentially whatever page somebody was on. But we've, as an industry, just an advertising website industry, have relied on cookies for the better part of 20 years now.
Oh wow, okay. I've actually, it's funny. I was just thought they were always there, and we've always used them.
Yeah, not originally, no.
So now that we know what a cookie is, like, why should I care of like what's changing, or what is like, why do I care about a cookie in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, um, as far as first party cookies go, you should still care, but we're going to mostly talk about third party cookies today. First party cookies, you care because being able to use that data allows you to continue to reach customers who you already know. So that's really critically important post the end of third party cookies. And so the reason that you should care mostly at the moment is because Google has said pretty clearly they're going to end the use of third party cookies. And that usage, and the reason it's so tied to Google is because it's the Chrome browser. That usage will end because the browser itself, Chrome, will start deleting cookies. So that connectivity that now lives there between what you do on one site and then as you transition to another, being able to track that sort of path that you've gone through, that's what we're going to lose. And it's got impacts from everything to advertising to websites themselves and how some of the third-party add-ins and applications work on websites, to our ability to count media and how it runs and the effectiveness of media. It's a pretty broad swath of the whole industry that's going to see pretty drastic impacts.
Yeah, that sounds intense. So, what are we looking at from like a timing perspective?
That's a great question. That seems to be somewhat of a moving target. So originally we were looking at 2022. Google had vaguely said that sometime in 2022 they were going to do away with cookies. And then they decided to kick the can down the road a little bit and move that out to 2023, realistically like H4 or rather H2 Q4 time in 2023. And then most recently, about 2 weeks ago, Google's like, just kidding, maybe the second half of 24. So Google keeps moving moving the target a little bit on us. So it's somewhat vague. Piece that I would add here, I think that's maybe important, is just thinking about there are other parties involved who may want to push the end of third-party cookies sooner.
Okay. So, oh man, that's great. So, two questions, I guess.
Okay.
One, like being that Google's kind of pushed this back, seems like already, like twice already. Is it a big deal that they pushed it back again? Like, was that like surprising, or did you kind of see that coming?
Yeah, it wasn't surprising. Not to me, and not to a lot of people. Honestly, Google, they have been in a position where they've said since they announced that they were going to do away with cookies, that they were going to impose those restrictions on themselves as well. And there's a large swath of Google's revenue as an organization that's tied to advertising. And whenever they lose the ability to track, they lose the ability to target, they lose the ability to monetize all that inventory, right? And so because of that, they've been trying to work within the constraints of privacy to come up with a way to replace third-party cookies in a privacy compliant way. Because everything they've come up with thus far has really not come through. It's not really been the solution. They've come up with things called Fledge and Flock and Topics, and they keep killing those plans because they don't really meet the requirements of the ability to target consumers in the way advertisers want and still be able to meet the privacy compliancy that's required.